Hail and well met. I'm the Bathroom Critic, and I know crap when I see it. One of the weightiest and most profound questions in bad movie scholarship concerns the nature of the worst movie ever. I personally have pondered the question at length, and for long I believed I had the definitive answer. Manos, The Hands of Fate, the worst film ever to be featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. But soon I was shocked to find a film that was stupendously worse than that. Actium Maximus, The War of the Alien Dinosaurs. But not long after seeing that one, I was forced to seek a more nuanced approach to this question. Which movie is the most technically incompetent? Which movie has the worst acting? Which movie has the worst writing? Which movie is the most painful to watch? For technical incompetence, I know of no other film that can top Actium Maximus. But even Actium Maximus, with its jaw-dropping, spectacular incompetence, is far more interesting to watch than many films, including tonight's feature. It may be a cliche to say that watching a movie is torture, but I'm going to go ahead and say that's a pretty good description for this film. In fact, I can fathom no better word to describe the experience of watching this movie, How to Slay a Vampire, from 1996. This 82-minute horror is perhaps the most diabolical thing to fall out of the sweaty orifice that is the Polonia Brothers / Intercoast Entertainment. That's just a grand name for a pair of twin brothers who obsessively shoot countless horror films in their backyard in Pennsylvania. They're somewhat widely known for their classic films such as Splatter Farm and Feeders 1 and 2, as well as The House That Screamed, which was their previous champion of cinematic agony. Most of their other films are simply rip-offs of these. They reuse props and plot elements from the movies of their glory days. However, How to Slay a Vampire really stands out in its lack of entertainment value, lack of originality, and sheer contempt for the audience. I am pretty sure that none other feature-length film has been produced with less effort than this. If one was, it would have to be filmed entirely in one room, and all of the dialogue would have to be ad-libbed. In all seriousness, the story of the film only lasts for the first 15 minutes. The other 67 minutes that we have to sit through are nothing but a blatant waste of the audience's time. For the vast majority of the film, nothing happens. The Polonia brothers just grope artlessly for excuses to postpone the end of the movie. It's like they're trying to torture the audience by delaying the relief as long as possible. Why on earth was this movie made? This is supposed to be a horror comedy. However, during its entire running time, this movie never once succeeds at being either remotely horrifying or funny. This deserves some kind of a twisted award for the least creative and most juvenile humor ever to appear in any movie not made by retarded third graders. Even if you still think references to homosexuality and related practices are funny enough to sustain an entire movie, you will still be bored to tears with them by the time you get about halfway through this turd. The comic premise of this movie is that a pair of slackers, played artfully by real-life slackers Mark and John Polonia, are nagged into cleaning out their basement. What spellbinding action! But they don't even deliver on that promise. Instead, the two take a peek in a closet and find some guy laying down there. What's so significant about this guy? Well, his wardrobe is literally made out of construction paper. And the Polonias couldn't even afford enough paper to make a full vest. Instead, his vest looks more like a necklace. Oh yeah, and he's also a vampire. You can tell he's a vampire because he makes Sesame Street Count Chocula noises instead of speaking. That's probably because they couldn't bother him to remember his lines, either that or he was just too embarrassed to say them. It turns out that this vampire, named Count Francis, is the comic relief character of the film. Why would a vampire be funny? Because this vampire happens to be homosexual. That's it. He has no other distinguishing characteristics. Basically, the basis for most of the humor in this comedy film is that a vampire likes other men. If that prospect does not have you rolling down the aisles in laughter, you're going to be very bored watching this film. Being gay doesn't prevent Count Francis to go out looking for prostitutes for some reason, but not after he farts for an extended period of time. This search leads to what may be the most unpleasant scene ever committed to film. Count Francis walks into a white, featureless room with a completely unrealistic blow-up doll. He then decides to make out with this doll as excruciatingly slowly and awkwardly as humanly possible. This scene is totally devoid of anything that could remotely be described as titillating or interesting, and lasts for 8 full minutes without a single interruption or relief. That's right. We spend 1/10 of the entire movie staring at a blurry extended shot of a doughy white guy grabbing at a flesh-colored party balloon in various ways with no music or dialogue. At this point, only 2 things are clear. 1, the Polonia brothers have absolutely no ability nor desire to maintain the viewer's interest when they made this turd. And 2, you are a hardcore masochist for sitting through that entire scene. Although this is certainly the worst scene of the movie, it is nowhere near the last. The Polonia brothers decide to waste some time of their own before setting off to slay the vampire. Mark Polonia watches pornography that consists of a grown man slapping 2 plastic toy dinosaurs together. Then, the two spend entirely too long getting ready and go forth, chasing the vampire who's running around in the broad daylight. They don't accomplish anything and quickly retreat back to their basement, although not after we have to watch another 30 seconds of Mark Polonia urinating. I am not exaggerating at all about the length of this scene. We have to watch him stand and urinate for 30 seconds of film time. Why do they want to go back into the basement? They have already tried every method there is to kill the vampire and failed. Although, to be honest, none of the methods that they tried earlier in the movie involved them actually touching the vampire. Because of this pointlessness, the brothers decide to ignore the vampire and do stupid random crap, working on the assumption that anything that's random must automatically be funny. This goes on for far longer than any healthy mind would ever think of putting in a movie. When the 80-minute mark gets dangerously close, the brothers decide to fight the vampire in hand-to-hand combat. Since touching the vampire would mean tearing his costume, this translates into the most boring and half-hearted attempt at a parody of a Rocky training montage as humanly possible. When one brother actually tries to start hitting the vampire, he accidentally opens the door to the basement, causing Count Francis to be bathed in the same sunlight that he was out and about in just a few minutes ago. He wiggles and flaps around, and then we are shown an image of ashes being flushed down the toilet. This implies that he was burned in the sunlight. You see, this is a comedy after all because they have a picture of a toilet. If you want to experience what watching this movie is like without actually having to watch the movie, ask a friend to do a favor for you. Have your friend paint a wall and then force yourself to sit and stare at that wall until the paint is dry. While you are doing this, make sure your friend reads out random words from a book on human sexuality every few seconds. As soon as the paint dries, have your friend paint the wall all over again. You have to sit through this all over again, but you'll get rewarded by a reference to homosexuality when it's all over. Be sure to repeat this 4 times to get a feeling of how long this movie feels. To wrap this review/rant up, I'm going to have to say that this is the worst film I have ever seen, and that I would be very surprised if anyone other than myself and the Polonia brothers were masochistic enough to sit through the whole thing. To be honest, I don't know what I would think if I heard that somebody actually likes this film. I mean, some people like to whip and beat themselves, but does anybody like being bored out of their skulls? Maybe independent filmmakers like Mark Polonia need to ponder that before they plan on making another movie. I'm the Bathroom Critic, and I know crap when I see it. And believe me, there's no crap like How to Slay a Vampire. Good night, everybody.